Young and Indigenous Podcast is an outlet for people to know about Indigenous knowledge, storytelling, and history. Through our youthful journeys as Indigenous people, through these stories, young people and elders share their experiences with us. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do this.
About to tell some red stories. Stay tuned.
Yay, podcast!
Asiem Nestrelicha Siem Sabachtuk Sanasnachach Lamisin Tholtholits Canum Zinaman E Sabachtuk Sanatan Alex Jefferson E Shagwal Salsila Donna Cook E Jesse Acosta Salsila. My name is Justina Joe, and I'm from the Lummi Nation. My parents are Alex and Elisa Jefferson. My grandparents are the late Mary Morris and Alex Jefferson Sr., and Donna Cook and Jesse Acosta. I'm a teacher here at Lummi Nation School.
Okay, so my first question is, why did you want to learn language?
My very first time that I discovered that I was really interested in learning language was in 2007 when I was running for Stomach Princess. And the contestants were given the task of interviewing elders on the meaning of Stomach, and I stopped by and visited with our late chief Zaluk and his mom Fran, and they talked to me about the meaning of Stomach and also encouraged me to learn to introduce myself in the language. And that was actually a very important part of being princess, was being able to do that. And I did win princess that year, and I learned how to introduce myself, and from then on I was just really eager on learning.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's a good story to start off with. Why is language important to you?
As I got older, I began to understand that it was taken away, and I realized that I have the gift of memory, and I have the gift of being able to teach, and so I started to see it as a responsibility to teach what I know and to share what I know. And it's important because of what has happened to our ancestors and the residential schools, and being relocated to reservations and all of the things that came with that. So I hold the importance in our ancestors and also in our future generations to be able to pick it up and learn it.
Yeah, that's good. I know I didn't realize how important it was till I graduated high school, and they're just like, this isn't so important for you guys because, it's just like I didn't learn until in college that it was like taken from us and that we've been here since like time immemorial. I was just like so mind blown by it. I was like, I don't know if I just didn't pay attention when I was here, but I was just like,
yeah, it's definitely a journey, and there are times where within my students that I see that they realize like, oh, hey, yeah, this is important, or they become curious. And I know when I see that in people, I'm sure to kind of like feed it more so that they could continue on, learning. And I have, these conversations with them about the residential schools and how their mama survived it and how lucky they are to be able to learn the language and speak the language every day in our house, and it's a part of our generational healing, because their mama was not allowed. What do you guys think about that?
Sad.
Yeah.
So sad.
Oh. Do you guys think that it's a good thing that we're able to learn the language?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. I know it's cool to see like people like you or like Carla coming from here and growing into this role and becoming teachers. That like makes my heart happy and it
Thank
makes me proud. My next question is, why is language preservation and revitalizing it is important?
Preservation. Preservation is something that I feel like is really important because the way that it was preserved previously for us was through audio recordings, from my understanding, and of course of oral tradition, carrying on the oral tradition. We have so many ways that we can be preserving language. And I think it's important because, we never know what is going to, happen, like, the world we live in today. And I think it's important to save it wherever we can. Like, I have I have language everywhere here in my classroom. I have notebooks of my own personal notes of things that I've learned. And I also have tons of audio files that I save that I study and that, I have my kids listen to at home. Preservation, I feel like, is a little bit of a touchy topic when it comes to language because our older teachers and our more experienced language speakers are very protective of it. And I think that part is important in learning language too, is understanding that, when we use it to educate, and we use it to participate in our Stillangen. And I think a part of where that protectiveness comes from is that of what happened to our people, it being taken away or someone using it for profit and things like that. I think we could do a lot more in Lummi with preservation, honestly. And I look forward to, those days to come where we can, do new things.
I totally agree. I know I one day hope like somebody will make an app so that we can easily just go on and download the app and it'll just the Lummi language
or
app.
a dictionary, something
that will be provided for us.
My creative wheels are always turning on how we could, get the language out there more. But I know like within our culture and with the leadership that we have to take baby steps, and we'll get there eventually.
Definitely. I know I always say take it one day at a time. Why did you want to become a teacher?
Why did I want to become a teacher? Well, I didn't always want to become a teacher. When I was diving deeper into learning the language, when the pandemic hit, our department, I worked for behavioral health at the time, wanted us to be able to share things because everybody was like online, right? Share things online for our people to engage in. And the language is something that our people are really responsive to. So I was providing weekly content online, videos and, graphics and things like that. And I also was taking class 2 times a week with the culture department, and John Ballou teaches those classes. And Smakia taught them for a while too. And I guess the Ted and Cynthia and Smakia, they all were encouraging me to become a teacher. And at first I was really hesitant, and I was like almost a little scared because I feel like it's a really big responsibility. And and there were times where I feel like I didn't know enough to be a teacher, but I come to understand, and I came, stepping into the role of being a teacher with the encouragement. The late chief used to encourage me to a lot and tell me to keep going. And, that the place in my heart where I know that, our leadership and the culture department and, my teachers and mentors believe in me, really gives me that push to be here. And also, I've very first taught was on Zoom. I taught the community culture classes and taught people how to introduce themselves. And, I had a pretty big audience on there, and everyone was responsive really well, received it really well. So from there, I kind of, just took baby steps towards becoming a teacher, and I landed my first teaching job in 2019 in the Ferndale Middle Schools. Without that, I don't know if I could do it. Without the encouragement, and feeling like they believe in me, I don't think I could do it.
I know, all those knowledge holders of language. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I interviewed Cynthia last year actually, and it was a good interview as well.
Yeah,
I probably listened to it.
She mentors me a lot through my experience as a teacher.
That's good. Why is it important to teach your children the language?
I think it's important to teach your children the language because they are the ones who are going to remember something. And it's a part of our oral tradition. So, the things that we learned from our caregivers, whether it's, your child learning from a grandparent, or your child learning from an aunt or an uncle, or, you as a parent yourself, they're going to remember something. And something about the development of them during the younger ages where they're going to absorb it more and remember it more. So the earlier you teach the kids the language, the more likely they are to remember it throughout their life. My dad was raised by his grandparents or his grandmothers on both sides. My late grandmother, Doni Morris or Cecilia Morris, she comes from Tulalip and she speaks Lushootseed.
Wow.
She passed away a couple years ago, but my dad used to fall asleep in the bathtub, he said, and she used to keep him awake by talking to him in the language, the Lushootseed language. She'd say, did you wash your colada? Did you wash your ears? And she would say all of the body parts in the language. Did you wash your buxid? Did you wash your nose? In Lushootseed. And he remembers those words from that experience. So my girls at home, my girls received their Indian names last year, and it is embedded in them for them to know what their Indian names are and to be able to tell anybody who asks them. I think it's a really strong part of identity for them to speak the language and, know what people are asking them or saying to them. And also, it grounds you where you're at. Because I told them, since I'm a language speaker and a language learner, and I have teachers, someone is going to ask you, because they know you're my daughter, they're going to come up to you and they're going to say, "Wat Kwansna?" And I wanted them to be able to know how to properly respond. So, and it happened. Potch is one of my teachers, and he saw my oldest daughter, and what did he ask you?
What kunstner?
Uh-huh. And she was able to respond properly and know what that meant. So that's something that we practice together a lot. I have a relative who lived in Seattle, and she was really lonesome for home. She stayed in Seattle temporarily for a little while, and she was really lonesome for home, and she stopped by here in Lummi, and I gave her, some language CDs, and she really appreciated it because she just misses, here. And so I think it roots you, like it grounds you where you are. And so when you speak language at home, you feel more at home. I think that's the best way I could describe it.
That's really good. I really like that you instill the language in your kids, like the was it the Silent Night song that you had your daughter sing? I was like, oh my God, that's so cool that you taught her to do that, and for her to just be so brave and go out and just seeing your TikToks too. I'm just like, wow.
My daughter last year, she was being assessed in the first grade, and they want to know that you could look at a picture of a cat and say cat, but she was saying peach. And so I had to tell the teachers, I'm like, well, I teach them the animals and the language, so that's where her brain was going first. And so the teachers were, really grateful that they worked with me on understanding that we speak the language, and she was able to get through her assessment and speaking the language, which I thought was really cool. But it's really unique to us.
Wow. No, that is really cool. I'm glad that her brain went that way.
Yeah.
Not the other way. I just saying in class how we're taught English first, but to hear that preserving it is working, and it's being instilled in your children. And
something that I teach in my classes here too is to think in the language.
Yeah.
So when I ask them questions, I want them to respond in Lummi She and not English first. So it's kind of retraining your brain once you're a little bit older, but once they're little, they'll eventually, their brain will sort out what to say first.
They're like, I think I'm supposed to do it this way first.
Yeah, it's like a automatic response, or like a process.
Wow, I really love that. Why should we save our language? And then there's a second part on what happened to it.
Why should we save it?
Yeah. Not that it was lost or anything, but
I think that a really, really big part of understanding language is understanding our ceremonies. You go to any ceremony, and most of what we do is us, for example, a naming ceremony. We're not just talking about that name, we're talking about those people that carry that name, those ancestors that come with that name. And so the ceremony is for them. It's for the people on the other side in the spirit world. Same with the longhouse. We do everything for the spirit, for the ancestors on the other side. And that's what they understand. They don't understand English. They understand the language. So when we speak the language, when we do those ceremonies and the language is there, we're communicating with our ancestors properly. I think that's one of the most important things about saving the language, is that we're also saving the ability to conduct our ceremonies in that manner, and understanding what those ceremonies mean, and that involves the language. Our late chief used to say, the culture and language, they go side by side. You can't have one without the other. And I always remember that. And it took me a while to fully understand that. You know, I've been involved in our culture, and I went in our longhouse when I was really young. But understanding takes a while. You go and you pay attention and you learn things as you keep going and you keep growing and understanding. But mostly that's what our ancestors understand, and that's even how our ancestors conducted ceremonies is for the people before them. So it's just a constant cycle of learning and understanding and really grasping what we're doing and why.
Wow, I totally agree with that. And I always, not that I always tell people, but my brother told me that, and then it just kind of stuck with me. Like, wow, that totally makes sense. They don't understand us when we go to that side.
Yeah.
And it's just like, we do need to instill this in ourselves so that, they can understand us well once we go to that side.
Lena at the moose moose.
Yeah, laying at the moose moose.
Leia.
Because we drive by what?
Lena.
The farm? Yeah,
the
we
farm.
see the cows. What else? What else do we see?
It's a kale.
Yeah, laying it at the...
Lena at the kale.
Yeah. What else do we see?
A quani.
Quanit. What's a quanit?
A seagull.
Yeah. What else do we see?
A quallingson.
Yeah, Quallingson. Yeah, we say Lenga at the Quallingson, Lenga at the Quanit, Lenga at the Moose Moose, Lenga at the Stakale. Sometimes Zara will say Lenga at the Tlach Tlach. She'll say, look at the oyster, and there will be no oysters.
I have one more.
What?
Linga at the salmon.
Stjanoch.
Stjanoch.
Yeah. Look at the salmon.
This one's kind of a hard question. If we were punished for speaking our language, how would that make you feel, like back in the day?
I recently we had an assembly for the Orange Shirt Day, the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, and my mother-in-law was with us that day. She's from Vancouver Island, and she, at a very young age, was sent to the residential school on Cooper Island. And she talked to me about it. And she doesn't share her story a lot. That's what I realized. And so I felt very fortunate that she talked to me about her story. I spoke at our assembly and, did my best to relay the feelings of our Shtalangan team to the rest of the school and the students. And one of the biggest things that the residential schools did was take away our language. And I would be very upset. It would be traumatizing. And it was for our people. I listened to an audio recording of one of my late great-granduncles. They were being interviewed, much like we are sitting like this. The lady was doing interviews and recording them about the land in Lac-Hamel. I'm also from a band in Lac-Hamel. She was talking about the land, she was talking about the cultural practices, and then she talked about the language. And my late uncle said in the interview, he said that his dad spoke Hokumelam and his mom spoke Lummi language, but they would never teach it to the kids. They would never learn it because of the way that the natives were treated back then. And during that time of that interview, he explained how our ancestors were treated during the Bolt decision and the fish wars, and how they purposely didn't teach their kids the language because they didn't want them to be punished or anything bad to happen to them. So there were families that intentionally even after, the residential schools didn't teach them the language because of the negative response that was given to our children from, various different events. So I think it's really sad. And I feel like I probably couldn't even imagine how our ancestors felt. And I know that still there's a lot of healing that needs to take place, and a lot of, I feel like you have to be at a place where you can gain an understanding of it, and you have to be at a certain point of your life of understanding. Sometimes I didn't always understand it the way that I do now. It took me, realizing the residential school experience, realizing, where we were back then to now, and, how bad the residential schools were. So understanding that is really sad in general. I couldn't imagine going through it. I probably couldn't even put to words how they felt or how I would feel.
Yeah.
I just know that it would be devastating. I think it's wild that it was literally against the law to be an Indian at one point.
Right? Like, what the heck?
Yeah.
And it was illegal to practice our songs and our
Yeah.
dances, like our arts and craft, like everything.
There is an intentional law put against
Yeah.
us, and I think that is wild.
I don't know, they just wanted to completely whitewash us and just kind of like,
Yeah.
they're like, there's this one comment in that video where he was like, if you don't learn the English ways, then you need to leave. Like, where are we gonna go? We're from here. Like, what do you expect us to do? So
Yeah.
he kind of spoke a little about this, but who taught you language?
I very first started learning from Smackia. But my very earliest memories of learning language in like elementary school was from Cynthia. And as I started diving deeper, I learned a lot from Smackia, and then John Ballou Potch. He has taught me a lot too. I go to our language department a lot if I have any questions. Khalil was at Ted Solomon. He is always, open to my questions, and I feel like they're really supportive of me and, my eagerness to know. There's some days where, like the other day, I was walking in the parking lot and I remember that I learned the phrase for the sun ray, like when there's a cloud and then there's like a sunbeam that goes through it.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, I know that word, but I couldn't remember it. And it was bugging me because every morning when I get here, the sun rises to that side and I see the sun rays poke through the clouds like a lot of times. And I was like, I know that phrase, but I couldn't find it in my notes and I couldn't remember it. And so I asked Potch what it was, and he told me. But, just being able to have people to, ask, and, I'm always learning. And I feel like we have a lot of teachers here in Lummi that are open and willing to teach. And I also learned things just by going to a gathering and, listening to the speakers and paying attention to what they're doing at different parts of the work. You learn a lot there just by observing. But I've had a lot of teachers, many teachers, and I'm still learning. So I'm still a student too. I spent a lot of time with my late great-grandmother, Vesta, and I remember talking with her and saying, Grandma, because she would have been born to, the generation that knew language. And her response to me was, I think we did, but I don't remember. I said, Grandma, did you guys speak the language? She said, I think we did, but I don't remember.
Wow.
She said, my sister told me that we did, but I don't know. And my kind of analyzing her situation, I think the trauma of the schools just blocked her memory of it. And so that did affect my family because, on that side of my family, we didn't, language wasn't common, something we spoke. So yeah, I was affected there. My parents had language class and, learned things in school. Like I remember growing up and my mom always asking us Quilla Queen, what time is it? And, she would call us by our Indian names and, language was in my home. But I feel like the oral tradition of it, from my grandma from my great grandma to my grandma to my mom to me, that wasn't there like it should have been. But I definitely have hope for our future that say I teach my girls and my girls teach their children. I think that oral tradition, hope is there for our people still.
Now, siam smakiatanas Choklamison, Virginia Sanatan, Craig Sanaman, Floyd Isabel Sanasosila, Nukchisan Maqualia Quinasan Tachel, Nastlit Quinasquala Coquinasqual, Outsan Kachit Choklamichasan, E Utatasan Quinas Twinauk. Hello, my friends and relatives. My name is Smakia. I'm from Lummi. My late father was Craig. My mom is Virginia. My late grandparents are Isabel and Floyd Warbus. And I would like to thank each and every one of you for coming here today. I would like to say just a few words. I don't know the Lummi language, and I'm still learning how to speak it. As far as, introducing myself in Klimichasan, that's first things first. It's automatic.
I agree. There's one question I didn't ask. Why is language so important to our identity?
You think about our tradition and how, just as we started here today, being able to introduce yourself. It's in our tradition to say who we come from. It's in our tradition to say where we come from. You talk to an elder or somebody who doesn't know you, they want to know who your family is and where you come from. So being able to do that, you're being able to tell somebody who you are and who you come from and where you come from is a huge part of our identity. And knowing that is a huge part of your identity. Because if you know where you're from, you know about those people, you know what they did. You really, really dig deep into understanding what it is to be a Lummi, or what it is to be, wherever you're from. Not everybody sees it that way, I think, but understanding, the language is understanding your lineage, understanding, who you come from. I wouldn't be able to introduce myself if I didn't know who I came from. And there has been, a small handful of students who I ask, like, who's your grandma or who's your grandpa? And they tell me, I don't know. They don't know who their grandparents are.
Aww.
And so, the job of being able to help them understand the importance of that. In our culture is, there are people who come from the log house, come from the squai quai, come from, all of these different gifts that are in our culture. And also, being able to understand, like, my, there are certain people who are like weavers in our community, or people who, are fishermen, and, all of these different people. You learn about all of that when you know who you are and you know who you come from. So identity is essential to our healing, and recovering from the colonial, genocide. Identity is key to healing that. I love it here at the school when and you see students starting to, become their own person. Last week at the assembly, we sang and danced here, and we have, these little dancers who are so passionate. And our principal was telling me at the end of the assembly, he goes, when you can see that someone has it and they're passionate about it and you can feel it. He said, I was almost crying. He said, I was almost crying seeing this young man dance because he has it. And that's identity to me, is he knows who he is and he knows what he's doing and he knows what that means. Those things are essential. And I wish for all of our people to know what their identity is, to know who they are, because it's a part of healing that generational trauma. It's a part of healing, the things that had happened to our ancestors. It's everything to us. Our identity is everything to us. And the language is, hand in hand with our culture. Like our late chief says, you can't have one without the other. And identity, you find out your identity in speaking the language. One of the first things people learn is, as an adult, is how to introduce yourselves. And, you have to know who you are.
Well, I really love that you say that. I know. My grandma, before she passed away, that's all she did was like, go tell them who you are and
Yeah.
who your grandparents are. And this was before we had our Indian names. But as soon as we got our Indian names, we'd like go, they'll be like, oh, I'm Quincia. But like in these last 3 years, I just learned how to say my introduction. My brother taught it to me, but I just want to continue to use it more, just like you said, because it's a part of who we are. And I really love that you said that today.
And you represent those people, right?
Exactly.
So, after my girls got their Indian names, I wasn't there, but my daughter told me that one of my language mentors, asked her, "What Kwinsna? What's your name? Who are you?" And she was able to tell them. She passed the test. And I was so happy and proud of her, because she goes, and I told them my Indian name.
Aww.
And I said, I'm so happy for you. And if it wasn't for me, drilling that into them, she would have said, I don't know. And I've heard, some of my students say that too. I don't know how to say my name.
Wow.
I don't remember it, things like that. So encouraging our young people to be proud of, carrying an Indian name and understanding what that means. is really important to me too. So I address my students by their Indian names in my class if they have Indian names, and they start to remember it that way, or they form their identity here too.
For sure.
Yeah, it's interesting to look at those things. My daughter's Indian name was actually written on the census when the United States started to take a census on the Indians on the reservation, and our ancestor preserved her name that way. She, back then they were given the names of like Mary and John, but she would write her Indian name, her Huilmoxna, on the census.
That's good.
And we saw it. We saw it on the census. I was looking, in our ancestry and saw her Indian name written on the census instead of her English name that she was given.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Before I end, do you have anything that you would like to share? Any stories or just anything that you would want to say to the community or generations just coming up behind us? I
would just like to encourage, everybody to, if you feel that that hunger to learn the language, or that hunger to listen to the language, or even to just be around our culture, don't ignore that feeling. Always trust that the Spirit is guiding you for a reason, and trust the people who are encouraging you to do so. The people around you, or the people that you turn to for advice, will never steer you the wrong way. And know that you're making our ancestors proud in everything that you do that involves the culture and the language, and you're a part of the preservation of our people when you're learning the culture and language. And like I said before, to find out who you are and who you come from and where you come from is it's a really healing journey to do. And I just I'm thankful, and I'm really thankful for the people who encouraged me to be here. And I hope that I'm that encouragement for my students, and for anyone who wants to become a teacher. I have some students here that say they want to be language and culture teachers. Mm-hmm. So I do have, there are interested in our community of people who are wanting to be, teachers. And, I'm really young. I am a young teacher, and so it took me being brave also. So I encourage our people to be brave and not be afraid of, don't hold yourself back from the things that are opportunity always awaits you. And but I just encourage everybody, encouragement goes a long way. And so anybody who is thinking about diving deeper into the language, I encourage you to do it.
Awesome.
And Haishka, thank you for having me, and thank you for listening.
Yes. Well, I just want to say Haishka, and thank you for taking the time and just doing this. I know I reached out to you a while ago. So
yeah, I'm glad I got to sit down with you.
Yeah, I'm really glad you shared your words and your stories today. And I really appreciate it. And everyone that's going to listen to this is going to appreciate it.
Haishka.
Thank you for listening to Young and Indigenous. This episode was produced by Bella James and Roy Alexander. Original music by Mark Nichols, Keith Jefferson, and Adam Lawrence. And a huge thank you to our funders, the Diskern Foundation and the Whatcom Community Foundation. And many Haishkas to the Laktamish singers for providing their songs. Yay Podcast is a part of Children of the Setting Sun Productions. We are a nonprofit based in Bellingham, Washington, on the ancestral homelands of the Nooksack and Lummi people.